Page 220 of The Unfolding is the story of Dallas Jenkins and the best Christmas pageant ever.
Bing pops up on the screen taunting me, the weekly reminder, pray for pageant. So I put my hand on the mouse and I slid the cursor up to hit delete. I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep praying for this project. I can't keep hoping. I went to delete it, and one of those few times in my life where I really felt God speaking to me, just saying, don't do that.
God's story has been unfolding.
Since the beginning of time.
He invites you to be a part of it.
Wow. Another page in The Unfolding.
Hey, this is Meredith Foster. Dallas Jenkins is the creator and director of The Chosen. It's the first ever multi-season show about Jesus. He shared his story with us back in 2021 on page 47 of The Unfolding about how God used failure to change Dallas, and how that became a part of the incredible story that led to creating The Chosen. Well, this past week, my friend Tina and I went to the movie theater to see the best Christmas pageant ever. It's based on a classic Christmas story. Maybe you read the book in grade school or saw the made-for-TV movie back in the 80s. The first time Dallas Jenkins read that book, 20 years ago, he just knew he was meant to make it into a movie. It wasn't just a hope or a dream. It felt a lot more like a calling. But over and over for years, he was told no. The door stayed firmly shut. So Dallas, tell me about how you first encountered the best Christmas pageant ever. Was it book, movie?
Well, the very first time when I was a kid. So I'd read the book in public school and had seen there was a little TV movie that was done back in the early 80s. I remembered seeing that as a kid. But I didn't have a whole lot of memory about it. And the fact that I'd read it in public school is what ended up resulting in the big surprise that I experienced when I finally read it again. So rewind maybe almost 20 years ago. It was probably 2005, 2006. My wife, Amanda, brings home the book from Pottery Barn Kids. It's where she used to take the kids to just play. Couldn't afford to buy anything there, but she would take the kids to play, and saw this little bargain bin, on the counter, copies of the book. And so she brings it home. She says, yeah, we read this as a kid. Let's read it to our kids. And so I go to read it to the kids, and it's a fairly short book. You can actually read, you could read the whole book in an hour to an hour and a half in a sitting. And so a couple chapters in, I'm struck by how funny it is and how witty it is and nostalgic. I'm like, man, this is really, really good. I don't remember, because as a kid, I wouldn't have appreciated the quality of it. But I'm like, man, this is so well done and well written. And then I'm a few more chapters in, I'm like, I don't remember it being this Jesus-y. Like, the fact that I read it in public school is what, surprised me. And this has been a play performed all over the world. I'm like, man, how does it get away with being so Jesus-y, this story in public school? The Christmas of it all, of course, makes a huge difference. And then we get to the last chapter, and when they're putting on the pageant, and the story of these 6 kids, the worst kids in the history of the world, according to the author, the narrator, talking about it through a kid's eyes, and how these kids from the other side of the tracks, they had, no knowledge of the Christmas story. They were in poverty. They were mean. They were, of course, we see as kind of the story unfolds why that is, but they're bullies, and they swear, and they smoke cigars, even the girls. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's also, there's this undercurrent of sadness as well that you pick up as an adult. So we get to the end where they've hijacked the pageant. They're going to play all the main roles. No one wants them to do it. Everyone thinks it's going to ruin this sacred tradition of performing this perfect little clean nativity every year. And because of their unique perspective, because of their poverty, because of the questions they ask, having never heard the story before, they're closer to the heart of the true story than everyone else who's been kind of caught in this tradition of the sweet, perfect nativity scene. And I am crying so hard, I can't read. Like, I'm ugly crying. And my wife, Amanda, she's emotional too, but doesn't understand why I'm crying so hard, because I haven't read out loud the sentence that I had just seen. So she's like, let me read it. And she grabs the book, and then she starts weeping, and I have to take the book back from her. And so we basically are just trading the book back and forth while the other one recovers. So I finished the book, and I said, I have to make this movie. I was born to make this movie. The combination of humor and emotion is something that I'm passionate about. It's kind of my wheelhouse. The Christmas of it all, the kids, the troubled kids. My wife and I are adoptive parents. We have a tremendous heart for troubled kids. But also it's in a Christmas classic, gift wrap. It's not so heavy that it's not a movie you'd want to see. It's funny and charming, and it's a Christmas classic. And I thought, man, to put this into the pantheon of some of the Christmas classics, it's been a long time since we've had one, where it also put the spotlight on the nativity story, which we don't normally get other than maybe a Charlie Brown Christmas. So I'm just like, I have to do this. So I Googled who held the rights to this, and I was able to track down these 3 guys who had gotten the rights from the author, and I tracked them down. I sent an email. I tried to find and I ended up having a mutual friend with one of them. And so I gave this huge passionate pitch for why I was perfect for this movie. And they were like, well, that's really lovely, but we actually have it set up with a real studio and a big time director. And I was someone who at the time was, hadn't done much. And so every year I would bug them. Every year I would check in, and I would always Google, Best Christmas Pageant Ever movie update, hoping, praying that nothing would happen, because I so badly wanted to do this.
Wow.
A couple of years into it, after they kept telling me no, I just started putting a reminder in my calendar on my phone and my computer. Pray for Pageant, just 3 words, just a reminder. And I'd like to say that I did holy prayers where I was just wanting God's will and I would be rejoicing whatever it was. But no, I was praying against anyone else making this movie because I just felt so strongly that it was my calling. And I know that all of us, including me, have confused a God calling with our own personal desires. Sometimes we get a goal, we're convinced it's a calling, but it's really just more our flesh. And the only way to truly know is time and prayer and Bible reading and mentorship and your spouse and all of these things. And but typically time will kind of prove out, is this something God just keeps putting on your heart? Or is it something that, you just keep kind of manifesting yourself? And I just felt like this was something God just wouldn't let go of, wouldn't let me, let go of it. And until about 5 years ago, when I reached out again and they said, okay, we have the rights back now to ourselves, but there's another studio that's really passionate and they're even bigger than the previous one. And they were hoping that their careers could kind of get a boost too by working with some major studio. And I knew that a major studio probably wouldn't hire me as a director at the time. And so they said, we've decided to go with this other studio. We're not going to give you the rights. And I went into my wife and was just so upset. And we both cried and we were both bothered by it. I come back to my home office and I sit down to get work done and bing, pops up on the screen taunting me, the weekly reminder, pray for Pageant. And so I put my hand on the mouse and I slid the cursor up to hit delete. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep praying for this project. I can't keep hoping. I can't keep planning on it. And I can't keep getting my hopes up.
Have you ever been in a position like this? I mean, it seemed like God was calling you to do something, but the doors just keep closing. That's where Dallas was. And he was ready to stop knocking on that door and put this dream to rest.
I can't do this anymore. I can't keep praying for this project. I can't keep hoping. I can't keep planning on it. I can't keep getting my hopes up. So I went to delete it. And one of those few times in my life where I really felt God speaking to me, just saying, don't do that. Don't do that. And I wanted to delete it and I couldn't, and I just didn't. So I moved the cursor away and I said, okay, God, I'll pray, I guess, whatever your will is, if I really want to do this movie, but I'm not getting my hopes up anymore. So please take this away from me. I'm so annoyed. And then Amanda walks in and says, I was just praying and I felt God putting it on my heart. This isn't over. I just don't think it's over yet. And I was like, crap, sorry for the bad word on
it's fine.
Radio, but I was like, man, I don't want to get my hopes up again. But we kept praying for it, kept envisioning making this movie. And then a couple of years ago, I reached out again and I texted him like, hey, it's Dallas, time for my annual bugging of you. And he texts back, call me. I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. So I call him and he says, the studio forgot to renew the rights. And so we have them back. And a couple of days ago, this is just a week ago that the studio forgot and that they got the rights back. He's like, so your timing is perfect. And he goes, a few days ago, my mom called me and said, have you heard of this show called The Chosen? And I said, well, that's funny. The creator of The Chosen is always bugging me to get the rights. And she's like, are you crazy? He's the only one who can make this movie. Give him the rights to this movie. And he's like, well, I have to listen to my mom, so let's talk.
Oh,
and so
my
we talked
goodness.
and eventually made it work. And so as I talk to you now, that I'm able to say to you on the radio and podcast and everywhere saying, right now there is a movie out in theaters called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. And it's been out for a couple weeks and it's doing well. And the critics like it, even the New York Times, which I didn't expect. And I made it. That is it's a surreal experience. It's a calling fulfilled to be able to say that. So that's the the long and short of the story that brought us to this point.
It's a beautiful story. I just saw it last night with my friend Tina, and we loved it and enjoyed it and laughed and cried. And even just if we even talk about that one scene, we'll cry again because it was so powerful. The cast, amazing. I just would love to hear like that process of actually getting into it. Once you get the rights, that's amazing. But then the process of making it and seeing the people who you end up being able to cast in it.
Yeah, it's somewhat daunting. You finally get the rights, and then the studio Lionsgate, is excited about it as well and wanted to work with me. And they had an executive who'd loved the book, and so we made the deal. And now I'm like, all right, now someone is putting up, millions of dollars for my dream, right? I got to deliver. And no, I do have a little experience with taking a beloved book and translating it to film or television. So that I'm used to some of that pressure. But then there's the casting process, and we've been envisioning this movie for so long. And my wife, Amanda, who has extraordinary casting instincts, she kind of watched the first round of auditions for all the kids and narrowed it down for me. And I think sometimes God just brought people to us, and there was no other choice. The girl who plays Imogene, the main girl, the roughest herdman who takes over the pageant, she's unbelievable. And then of course, the process of casting our leads are adults. Judy Greer, who's someone I hadn't initially thought of because she's amazing, but she always plays these kind of quirky, funny characters. And now she's going to play the mom who volunteers for the pageant. I'm like, can she portray this kind of Midwestern, classic traditional stay-at-home mom? And yet she loved the script, and we met, and I realized she was perfect for it. Pete Holmes, who's a well-known comedian who plays the dad, is great.
He was great.
Has a strong faith background. And then Lauren Graham, Lorelai from Gilmore Girls, legendary. She loved the script and comes on as the narrator and someone who makes an appearance in the movie as well. And we got really fortunate. Yeah. And the heads of all our departments, production design, costumes, hair and makeup, the cinematography, they all just really took on the vision that I'd been building for years, and the movie that I had in my head, and elevated it and made it even better than I expected. And so it's been a wonderful, wonderful process.
Can you look back and think, wow, if you'd gotten the rights the first time you asked for it, can you look back and see how the waiting and the timing and how maybe God was actually using that to do some things in the process can you look back and say, it's actually better that it's coming out now than it would have been when you first asked?
100%. I mean, I wasn't half the filmmaker than I am now. And I'm still not, I'm not tooting my horn. I'm just saying I'm much better than I was then, and much more equipped to handle something that's a little bit larger than the projects I was doing then. God has broken me down and humbled me from 7 years ago. You and I talked about this when I kind of everything was taken away from me in my career, and my narcissism was put on full display and crushed by God and removed. And so there were so many things that I had to be surrendered and humbled by, that I wouldn't have been able to handle The Chosen. And then of course, The Chosen is what led to this project, which of course is going to lead to more with The Chosen. I mean, it's just the timing of it was perfect. I think the timing of this movie and the message of this movie is needed more than ever this year, during an election season when we're so tribal and divided. And needing to be reminded to look at the other, to look at those who we would typically try to keep, that there's characters in the movie from the church who don't want the herdmans at the church. They don't want them ruining their sacred Christmas pageant. And it's because of the herdman's unique perspective that it actually brings heaven to earth in a way that hadn't been accomplished before in that Christmas pageant. And everyone learns, including the herdmans, of the true meaning of Christmas. And, I think that's just more important than ever now. And I'm so grateful that God made me wait as hard as it was.
Obviously, you were thinking, planning, dreaming about what it would be like to make this movie years in advance. But was there anything in the process of either making it or when you finally sat and watched the finished product that surprised you about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that there are some scenes in the movie that I hadn't written before, hadn't necessarily conceived of, that ended up, my co-writer and I kind of came up with to address certain problems that are faced when you're doing a movie as opposed to a book. And so you go, you know what, we have to show this. We can't just be inside someone's head. We have to come up with some of these scenes. And then also in the book, the ending, which is so powerful, and made us cry so much, and what I assume made you cry watching it in the
Yep.
theater, is that in a book you can set it up better with thoughts and narration. Well, in the movie, we want to show some of these scenes. We want to show this character arc that these the kids are on, and even the mom. So some of the things that we enhanced and illuminated in the movie that aren't in the book. Good news is everyone who's read the book that's posted anything about it has loved the movie. There hasn't been anyone who's been disappointed, and that's important to me because I love the book so much. But I do think we elevated some of the storylines, and that I think the movie is. I wouldn't say it's better than the book, but I would say that it's a better movie than it would have been if we just literally did a reenactment of the words on the page of the book. And so I've been surprised also by the response. I mean, the critics, I mean, having I think we're at a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, which just doesn't happen for family movies, much less movies that have a strong faith component to them. The New York Times loved the movie. I was just like, that's as surprising to me as anything involved in the making of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have to ask, when you filmed the final scene, I don't want to give too much away, but...
Well, it is called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, so I think that we do get a chance to see that the Christmas pageant does go well.
It is. That's right. It is the best. Yeah. I have to know, when you were shooting that scene, could the crew keep it together? It was so emotional. And I know it's a different thing when you're shooting it than when you're watching the finished product, but man, it was powerful to see. And those kids were amazing. They were just amazing.
Truly amazing. And again, without trying to give too much away, those were real tears by that little girl.
Oh my goodness.
She's just a great actress, and all the actors were just phenomenal in it. I would say the process of filming is so clunky and so logistically intrusive that the crew itself, they're always focused on their jobs.
Yeah.
My job is to kind of maintain a little bit of a healthy distance so that I can coordinate the orchestra. But my wife and I, standing at the monitor watching the key moment, we're of course very emotional because we've envisioned this for so long.
Yeah.
But you're also so desperately wanting to get it right. Whatever comes on to film is going to be there forever. So there's not a whole lot of room to just bask in the glow of a good take, because there's also, as you've seen in this movie and in that scene, there's 15 different camera angles that are all working together. And then there's music, and there's timing, and there's audio and visuals. They all have to come together. And so if you get overly impressed with your own work on one of the elements, you're gonna miss out on the importance of all the other elements as well. So, when it finally came together with the music, and our composers, Matt and Dan, who are also the composers of The Chosen, did such a beautiful job. And you get to watch this scene. I've seen the scene now, 75 times, and I've cried probably 50 of them, because it just really is. And I say this genuinely, and I hope you know that the word itself I'm about to use is by definition bigger than me, but so it's not arrogance. I think the scene is transcendent. I think that, and that's what I experienced in the book. Barbara Robinson, the author, coming up with this idea of the most broken among us, delivering the story, portraying the story of the nativity. There's a moment where the two characters come out, and one of the girls in the pageant who's against them and who's not happy with the Herdmans taking over her role, she says, "Oh, they look like refugees," as Mary and Joseph, and she's saying it, in a sarcastic, upset way. And the main character, the girl who's watching, says, "Yeah, they do." And she's got a smile on her face because she's like, that's actually the story. Mary and Joseph were refugees. And those kinds of moments, I'm like, man, that is just that idea from Barbara Robinson was so beautiful. It was transcendent. And I believe it's changing people's lives. And I'm so proud that I was able to be part of that process of delivering this to a whole new audience.
I'm grateful, Dallas, that you are the kind of person who's looking for those kinds of stories to tell, that you have the passion for it, and that you're willing to respond to a calling from God to continue on, even when you were told no. And thank goodness for your wife, who's one of those kind of people who keeps speaking truth, even when circumstances say otherwise. So really grateful that you hung with it. I do believe that it's something, as you've said, really powerful for this particular moment in our culture, at this particular moment in history. I think we all need to be able to sit in a movie theater or watch something that takes us out of all the cultural chaos and reminds us of the simplicity of transforming love. That's what God has for all of us, and it's beautiful. And I'm really glad that you did it. How long is it going to be in theaters? I know people will want to see this. What is the plan, and how can people see it going into the future?
Well, if it's still in theaters as you hear this, and it is, if the day that we're recording it and releasing it, it is still in theaters. We are about to go through the gauntlet of Thanksgiving competition from Moana 2 and Wicked and Gladiator 2, all films that are perfectly worthy. I'm not criticizing them. I'll probably see all three of them. But they could just squeeze out our, true meaning of Christmas movie. So hopefully we can survive Thanksgiving and get into December, where the whole world is now looking for more Christmas stories. So it's done very well the first 2 weekends. It's gotten really good reviews. The word of mouth is been overwhelmingly positive. But the reality is we are up against some giants. And so if you are hoping, well, I'll just wait until Christmas, you might not make it that long. So please go see it this weekend. I promise you, you'll still feel the Christmas spirit, even though it's not quite Christmas yet. That's what everyone has been saying. And again, I don't want you to do it as a favor or just to support. It's only if you really want to see it. And if you love it, please spread the word. Please have some urgency behind it, because theaters will keep it around as long as it is selling tickets. So even if we can just hang out, even if we're not in the biggest screen, if we can just hang out long enough for people to find this movie, it really can impact the world.
And it's absolutely worth seeing. I like my friend and I haven't been to a movie in quite a long time. And so it was a great movie to go back to the theater to see and to walk away feeling like, I'm so grateful I spent that time and encountered that story. So thanks for doing that. Wonderful.
Yeah, thanks, Meredith.
Anything else you want to share?
No, I mean, we're just right now focused on this movie's release, but also I'm writing season 6 of The Chosen. Can always use prayer for that. Season 5 comes out early spring of next year. So a lot of things going on, a lot of different Bible projects that we're developing. The fact that right now, unlike almost any time in history, the world and even big media companies are wanting to pour resources and experience and distribution into these kinds of movies. And they're being treated not as just unique curiosities, but as valid stories to be shared with the world, is an unprecedented time and something I hope we're all grateful for.
If you are a fan of The Chosen, then you are going to love seeing some of the actors from The Chosen in the Best Christmas Pageant Ever. The actors who play Gaius, Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Mary Magdalene, they all have roles in the movie, alongside great actors like Judy Greer, Lauren Graham from The Gilmore Girls, Pete Holmes, and then some incredible child actors. If you want to see the movie, check your favorite local theater to find showtimes. You can also head to BestChristmasPageantEver.movie to check for showtimes near you. It is such a good movie. I think you'll really enjoy it. And it just might make you cry, but in a really good way. As Dallas mentioned, season 5 of The Chosen is coming out in early spring 2025. If you haven't seen seasons 1 through 4, you can find those on Peacock, Prime, also on the Chosen app, and you can learn more at thechosen.tv. Thank you so much, Dallas, for sharing your story with us. Also, big thanks to the Unfolding team. They're the folks who make every episode possible. Michael Shermack, Lindsay Caparoon, our producer and network director, Jason Rackow. The Unfolding is a Wow God production. Discover more at wowgod.com.